Hello everybody, welcome to my March wrap-up of all the books that I read in the month of March. Let me start off by showing you my t-shirt because I think it's awesome. It's Paddington! Paddington! So now we've got the important bit out the way, we can start off by saying that last month I read 6 books and I said I hope to read more in March. I did. I read one more. I read 7 books this month. However, the 7 books that I read were actually quite big books. So, you know, that's good. Let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of March is my first kind of big non-fiction book for the year. And that was The Lady in the Tower, The Fall of Anne Boleyn by Alison Weir. I met Alison Weir a couple of years ago at Cheltenham Literature Festival. She is so passionate about her writing. She's just brilliant. And if you don't know who Anne Boleyn is, she was the second wife of Henry VIII and the first of his wives to become executed. Henry VIII is known for various things, probably mostly for having 6 wives. He's also responsible for the Reformation, creating the Church of England. And I really wanted to read this for quite a while, and I just really had to read it this month. I was very unsure when I first started reading this because it is a biased text. You know, you could tell that Alison's in support of Anne and she has her theories about why she fell from her throne and fell from being the wife of Henry VIII. However, she did support those theories, and despite that they are slightly biased, I actually did agree with practically everything she said, and I just thought it was brilliant. She wrote it as if it's almost like a story. She didn't, you know, put anything really fancy in it. She just bare facts, and that's all it was needing, and it was brilliant. So if you're interested in reading some more about Anne Boleyn, I wouldn't suggest you start here. If you want to start with Anne Boleyn, start elsewhere. But if you already know a bit about Anne Boleyn but want to know more about her downfall, this is a brilliant book. 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads for this one. The next book that I read in the month of March was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. This is my 3rd Jane Austen. I've read Northanger Abbey, I've read Pride and Prejudice, Colin Firth, yum, and now Sense and Sensibility. I really like Sense and Sensibility. However, it's no Pride and Prejudice. I gave it 4 stars just simply because the character of Eleanor was lovely, and I just got a bit annoyed by Marianne. I was just like, oh, just stop it. Stop being, you know, a toddler having a tantrum. You know, it's just, stop it. So she annoyed me a little bit, but, you know, it was still a brilliant book. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read a book that I've wanted to read for a while, and just this month I saw it in the charity shop, bought it and started reading it as soon as I got home, and that is The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. Now this is a big book. This is over 600 pages, but I think I've read it in about 3 or 4 days, something like that. I love this. This was so good. It's just brilliant. It's so funny and it's so witty in the writing style. It's brilliant. This is about a woman called Isabel, who's a young American. She's 23 and she comes over from America to her aunt and uncle's kind of big manor in the countryside. There she meets her cousin. She also meets other gentlemen, and several gentlemen actually propose to her. There are several suitors presented to her. However, she does turn them down. Eventually she does accept one, and it's kind of her life ongoing. This for me was just brilliant. It was emotional when it was meant to be emotional, and it was thought-provoking, and I really enjoyed it. I also really liked the writing style of this. I thought it was brilliant. I thought I would just read you this quote, which is the very first sentence of this book, and I think it just kind of explains the writing style perfectly. Under certain circumstances, there are few hours in life more agreeable than the hour dedicated to the ceremony known as afternoon tea. Oh, just geniusly witty and funny, and I just loved it. And I think I might do a full review of this because I don't see it around YouTube and BookTube that often, so I really enjoyed this. 5 out of 5 stars. Please go ahead and read it. Next up was my Agatha Christie for the month. Another Poirot. I think I'm on a bit of a Poirot roll at the moment, and I picked up the ABC murders. If you've never read this and you don't know what it's basically about a serial killer, a serial murderer out there, and he sends these letters to Poirot. He's like, come on Poirot, let's play a game. And he kills people with their surnames. So he'll start with, alphabetically, he'll start with A, he'll murder someone with the surname beginning with A, and then B, C, so on. Each time he murders someone, he leaves an ABC railway guide with them, and he thinks it's like a bit of a game, really. And it's really interesting to see how Poirot uncovers it, and it's brilliant, it's ingenious, and I so got into this, and it's definitely one of the best. So 5 out of 5 stars for this one, and I highly recommend you pick this up. So after I read that, I actually ended up being quite ill, and I ended up being bedridden. I was just full of flu and just exhausted. And you know when you have the flu and you feel quite down and you don't know what to do? So I stayed in bed and I watched Paddington. Yay, t-shirt, yay. And I also watched the film version of my favourite book, and I watched that about 3 times. And I was like, do you know what, I'm literally just going to read my favourite book. And I read it cover to cover in one sitting. Took me about an hour or 2. I flew through it. It's amazing. I love rereading books, especially rereading my favourite book of all time. When I've been sad, I've often gone to this and just flicked through bits of it, but I've never reread it from start to finish, and I'm so glad I did. And it's still hands down my favourite book of all time. Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson. And it's Persephone. This is why I have a massive love for Persephone, because if Persephone wasn't around, I don't think I would have ever got this book, and it's amazing. It's my favourite book ever, 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 ever. If you don't know what it's about a woman called Miss Pettigrew, who's a bit of a useless governess. She ends up going to Miss LaFosse's residence, who's this blonde, glamorous American woman who's completely naked underneath this silk dressing gown. She meets all her men and her alcohol friends, her drug friends. It's so funny, it's witty, it's extremely jazz age-ish with the dressing up, the parties. It's so much fun, and you can just whiz through it. It's genius. This copy actually comes with pictures such as these ones, which of course are lovely and brilliant, and oh yeah. And it's, you know how you feel when you read your favourite book that you just like, oh, I feel so much better now. It kind of made me feel a bit better. So yay, favourite book ever. So after picking up my favourite book of all time and finishing it, I was thinking about maybe picking it up again and rereading it again, but then I thought, no, don't be silly, just read something similar to that. So I decided to read something similarly funny around that sort of period. So I decided to pick up Carry On Jeeves. This is a load of short stories put together, and it's just brilliant. It's so funny. It's very PG Wodehouse. If you've seen the TV series, or you just are a huge fan of PG Wodehouse's work and you want to read some more, pick up the Jeeves and Wooster series. It's brilliant. Yeah. However, I did give it 4 out of 5 and not 5 because The Inimitable Jeeves for me was a little bit better. Just a little bit though. And finally, I didn't know what to read after that. I felt a little bit naughty and was craving an Agatha Christie, and I thought, do you know what, sod it, I'm just going to read another one because I wanted to. I restrict myself to 1 a month because a couple of years ago I used to read about 4 or 5 a month, and obviously you don't read a lot else, so that's why I restrict myself to 1. But if I'm reading like 5 other books other than the 2 Agatha Christie, I think that's okay. So I picked up Sparkling Cyanide, which is one of the books by Agatha Christie that doesn't feature like Miss Marple or Poirot or like Tommy and Tuppence. It does have kind of like a reoccurring detective, but not a massively well-known one. This for me was a little bit like the short story The Yellow Iris, but a little bit bigger. So basically there is people sat around a table and they're looking back about a year ago of all these people sat round, and one of them ends up being killed by cyanide. They say that it's suicide. However, there's people that disagree and they try and find out what happened and investigate the case. Oh, this book was so good. I really liked this book. It was brilliant. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because, as I said, I read it in one sitting and it was brilliant. It was so inquisitive and I literally had to keep reading it. And the reason why I picked this up was because I did the classics book tag, and after the classics book tag I was just like, right, okay, I've got to read more. I have to do it. I've got to pick this up. So I did. And I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. So that's all the books that I read in the month of March. I'll show you what I'm currently reading also. So I have picked up Underby Walled by Winifred Holtby. Lots of you have been seeing them on my bookshelf behind me. They're here. So I've got South Riding there, and then I've got The Land of Green Ginger there. People have seen them and be like, oh, have you read any of them? And I'm like, no. So I decided to pick up the first one, which is Underby Walled. I'm loving it. It's really good. I'm only on page 75, but I still think it's brilliant. It's from the 1920s. It's very 1920s countryside-y. It's lovely. Yeah. So far, really enjoying that. And I'm also reading Aunt Mame by Patrick Dennis. This, again, it's funny and it's witty. This one I think is from the 1950s, I think. I'm only on page 28 of this one, so not as far through. But still, it's enjoyable and lovely. So that's it. That's all I've got to show for you today. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them in the comment section below. And I shall see you soon for my next video. Bye for now.